nice. It was actually scary. It was very scary to be alone in the middle of this environment where where the crocodile could pass through it because they migrate from one river to the other. Or I did the most natural way by going back to the land and living a natural life, but I did it in the most unnatural way. So they said, we're gonna close the airport and we cannot keep you here. So by law, we need to send you to jail. I think I cried. Yeah, I think I cried multiple times during the process, of course.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tiny Farm Friends podcast. Our guest today is a special gentleman, a blessing to the humanity and a dear friend. Joshua is a world traveler, an educator, an entrepreneur, and he single-handedly built an eco-village in his native place in Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Joshua, for joining us on this podcast. I'm super stoked to have this conversation with you finally. We've been trying to do it for like almost 6 months now.
Yeah, exactly.
But I am really happy that we're getting to do this in person.
Likewise. It's been a little while indeed since we got in touch in order to do this podcast. Finally, I came around this area. It was time for us to put each other together and to exchange as much as possible. So my honor, that's for sure.
Great. I think before we dive into your incredible journey, I want to know the secret of your infectious smile. Like, what keeps you so positive and enthusiastic about life?
I guess it's just the nature of life itself. That's what you go for the first question as one of the deepest questions already.
Yeah.
But I think just the fact that we are alive, like there are very low chances that we could have been on Earth experiencing this experience that we call life. The fact that we have been somehow chosen or we have the chance to live it is really the blessing by default. And so I believe is also maybe another thing that might help is the fact that in my youth, while I was becoming, let's say, a man, I spent a lot of time alone. And this time alone allowed me to kind of see more of my purpose, more of what I need to, what I'm here for, let's say. And so knowing that I'm walking my purpose, regardless the fruits of the result itself, just knowing that I'm walking my purpose already gives fulfillment to my heart, and this brings a level of, let's say, serenity and peace and eventual joy. And yeah, but there are also many more reasons, but we can go for.
I think that is quite profound and definitely it rubs off on other people, and we need such positivity in this world. So definitely so many people already know you for the work that you have been doing, and you've been sharing it extensively on social media and YouTube. But for someone who hasn't seen your extensive journey on YouTube, can you walk us through how your journey has been from being born in Milan to like going back to your native land?
Yeah. So basically, I was born and raised in Milan. My father's from Ghana and my mother's from Italy. My father's from not too far from where I'm based. Actually, it's the same region, but a different town. It's called Latte, and it's also a very, say, culturally deep ethnic group that is also believed to be one of the first group that arrived in Ghana in the 14th, 15th centuries. And when it comes to my mother, she's from Italy, also from a very culturally rich place called Napoli, and very beautiful also. A lot of people, when they have stereotype about Italy, generally is actually about Napoli, let's say, or the south of Italy at least. Very beautiful food, nice culture altogether. But I was not brought up there. I was brought up in Milan, which is the opposite, not only geographically, but also like culturally. Milan is a place that has much more influence from the Nordic/central part of Europe, more Germanic influences. So the weather is cold, and also the culture is much colder. And so being brought up in that environment, I faced surely a lot of racism as well. And this is something that is embedded within the European culture. Like, we cannot talk about, especially in a place like here, Rishikesh, when a lot of people are coming for a spiritual awakening.
Right.
We can never really talk about spirituality or the depth of humanity without understanding also its social background, from where also many things came to life. And so, likewise, in my case, my whole journey also came from a social background that created eventually also this joy that you talked about, this willingness to face the challenges and so on. So being in that environment as a young kid growing up, I mean, I didn't have such a crazy life. But of course, you see microaggression everywhere. But also, racism is very embedded within the culture, social structure of everything. Nowadays, of the daily life, you turn on the TV, you see the social news, and you see certain titles, certain comments, and how people looking like me would be treated or seen. So definitely, I felt this. Initially, I was not necessarily thinking, oh, this is that, or this racism. I just felt something that was not home.
Right.
And then I could feel that I could not achieve my best within that environment. I felt that I needed to go out there in order to not only find more acceptance, but also to find an environment where I could do more and create more. But also on top of it is also Italy is, we can put it together within the Western culture, a culture that nowadays is very much consumeristic, very much materialistic, the capital of fashion, the capital of many luxurious cars and so on. So it's a reality where a lot of people are, regardless of the racism, it's also a place where a lot of people are just chasing these superficialities, these superficial matters, and trying to find these things that this Western world tell us are wealth. And so I could feel also something missing within the context that was bringing a lot of people into a level of I don't know, living life passively, living life without the fullness of their heart. And since young age, I started to work during summer after school. It could be, I did many different jobs. It could be plumber or electrician or in a pizzeria as well, different works, whatever was coming for me to save up some money, also gain some experiences. And I remember where I was going outside of my home early morning, looking at people going to work with their face literally like in their eyes, almost there was no soul, and I was I was about to become like this. That was how this society works. You go to school, you study what they want you to study, you learn what they want you to learn, and so that you are prepared to be pretty much a puppet within this society of production, of fast production, faster consumption. So I felt that something was missing within the context that was not necessarily for me. And I remember also looking at many documentaries back in the days about many different indigenous communities living in the wild, in nature, and being able to not only survive but to thrive without necessarily following the structure of the society that I was used to, without even necessarily following the monetary structure. So for me, this was so fascinating. I was like, wow, how can be in this 21st century people can still live this way? So that was enough for me to take my bag, pack everything I had, and go with one-way ticket towards the unknown. Back then, the unknown for me was Greece. So I didn't go too far from it. I didn't go so much into the wild. It was for work, actually. I found a work in a resort, go figure. So this journey from Greece, after a few weeks, I ended up in London. My sister was there. She was kind enough to offer me a floor and a roof. And then from there, I managed to find a job in a very conventional environment. I mean, I'm in London, the most cosmopolitan and the most consumerist place on earth, and among the most. And while I was there, I gave thanks because I met so many different people from all over the world. It was the first time also, because by the way, I was brought up in Milan, but not in the city of Milan. I was in the suburbs of Milan. So this is even more laid back. So being in a place like London where I could see people from all over, I met for the first time like young people like me from Ghana. It was the first time ever. Even I met mixed people like myself ever for the first time was in London. So it was for me very, very eye-opener. I was not that young, not too old. I was 20 years old. I was a fresh 20 years old. And for me to have that experience was very important. Also to being invited, I was working in an environment like of modeling, blah, blah. So in that environment, you go and party every weekend and you see this, you see that. I started to live that life that I used to maybe admire on MTV type of thing. So from nature to MTV cribs type of thing, I was like, not necessarily what this journey I felt pushed to start this journey for, but I ended up there and I embraced it for whatever it was. It was for me very important to walk on the path and to see eventually that at the depth of all of this, there's not much more than whatever you see. And so I felt like, okay, I need to go a little bit deeper. And at that point is when I felt this call to go towards the nowadays called Australia. Because there were the Aboriginal people of Australia, I heard that they were still managing, even though the heavy colonization that they went through, to live in a way or the other a life that was still very much connected to the roots and to nature. That's what pushed me eventually to start this journey indeed. So after about 9 months in London, not too long, I felt like, okay, I need to get out of here. It's time for me to go. I just felt it in my gut. I felt it in my heart. It was time to go. So I took a one-way flight ticket, and I used the privilege of the Italian passport. One thing at least I could hold was the privilege of the Italian passport. At some point, I also wanted to leave behind, but I was like, let me keep it. So yeah, I arrived there, and the journey started. I arrived with an airplane. I landed in an airport. Every airport generally is in a city, so I ended up in a city, didn't know anybody. My English still, by the way, was still work in progress. I didn't speak English until I left Italy. So in south of Europe, maybe things nowadays are a bit different, but back then, it's not that you speak English. It's like you manage a little bit. So going to Australia with the accent was even something beyond my skills whatsoever. But I needed to manage, so I found a job in a restaurant, do my thing, and eventually, from one place, I went to another city, and then another city, and then I managed to find my, let's say, strength to take a tent and go in the middle of a beach next to a cliff, actually on top of a cliff next to a beach in Northern Territory. And this place was a particular place to me, to my heart, to my whole experience, because was the first time that I decided to be very in close contact to nature. And this was not a camping site, was not a place where other people were, where I was arguably alone. I needed to walk 15 to 20 minutes to be in a place where there was this parking lot where a lot of travelers were stopping, maybe with their camper van or whatever. But as for this very beach here, I was very much alone. And so I remember, actually, before I moved on top of the cliff, I stayed on the beach, and there was this type of little caves. And so I stayed in the cave. I put my tent in there, and then I remember waking up in the middle of the night where the waves were literally like coming at me next level, and I realized that the high tide was so strong, and the low tide also was so strong, but I didn't know the timing and anything. So I managed then eventually to move my stuff on top of the cliff. So I went on top of a cliff that was literally next to the cave, and I stayed there. And then is when I started to really face my fear and to face all that romanticism that I had about nature. Was time to face it, and the romantic way was not so nice. It was actually scary. It was very scary to be alone in the middle of this environment where you know where the crocodile could pass through it, because they migrate from one river to the other. So they stay also in salty water, the biggest crocodile on earth, where I was literally even just rinsing myself in the seawater and knowing where there were jellyfish that could kill you just with a touch. So I needed to go and have a level of surrender that I never experienced before. I needed to exercise a level of surrender I never experienced before, and to not only find this surrender, but also find this peace within this surrender, this peace within this harmonious way of nature. I was afraid of what? I was afraid of what I didn't know. And humans generally are only afraid of what they don't know. So I remember my very first night, I was sweating cold, hearing noises, imagining already the worst, screaming, hey, what is that? What is here? Thinking the crocodiles were around, and then opening up the tent and see just crabs walking around the tent, making noises. Then in my mind became something so crazy. And I realized also the power of the mind. How strong is our mind in both ways, in a positive way and in a negative way, that everything, our reality really starts from it. And at least when it comes to our personal choice. And so that very night eventually extended to another night, and I started to feel much and much comfortable, much and much knowledgeable about my surrounding environment. And then is when I started to feel such a huge amount of peace. I remember waking up in the morning with the sounds of the birds and the sun rising, and just stretching and see the ocean and the beauty of that environment really fulfill my heart to a different level. I remember I realized also I was not eating that much. I was not feeling even to eat that much. I was feeling fulfilled, literally even in my stomach, by something outside of me. And it was really strange for me to live in it, because I didn't know how to explain such a thing. I remember also one time, few times I got sick. One time actually my food got infected, and it was known over there to, as the tropics, Northern Territory can be very tropical, especially during the wet season, and there are a lot of bacteria. So one time I remember it happened to me on my foot, and just from one day to the other, I was not able to walk anymore. My foot was swollen so much, and I knew the hospital was relatively far away. Also, I couldn't go. I remember it was evening when this was taking place, and I couldn't go walk all the way to the hospital. It was like maybe 1 hour walking or something. So I had no other choice that be like, I remember telling to myself, there's no way I can get sick. I will defeat whatever is in there. There's no way I can get sick there. I will defeat whatever will be there. I just kept on having this type of almost like a chant the whole night, not knowing even what a chant was, what a mantra was. I just went for it. And crazy enough, the morning after, the swelling was gone and I could actually walk. And to me, really, really, I was shocked to witness something like that. Like really shocked. I was like, no way, what's happened? And this it gave me just an introduction to really how powerful we are, but how limited we have become due to this society that just follows this superficial way of living. And when I tell these stories to certain indigenous communities, for them is nothing special. It's just normality. Or maybe when we share certain things or certain topics to Western mindset, then it all becomes impossible. But what's possible? Like I think we're the Cherokee, but an ethnic group of North America used to say I think we're the Cherokee. They used to say we give ourselves the power to be. And really I started to experience that on that cliff. But definitely the point that really changed drastically even more about my perception of life, I would say, and especially also the natural world, was one morning when I woke up and once again, the sounds of the bird and all the beauty. And then I seen from the distance a man that was actually fishing with a spear, and it was a low tide, so it was quite in deep of the ocean, but still like managing to walk. And then I decided to go all around in order to reach where he was, and I needed to go around to the other beach. And once I arrived there, I started to smell the firewood, like the fire was starting to be made, and I could smell the smoke. So then I went closer to where the smoke was at, and there was a lady and an old man, and they saw me curious, and they were like, "Oh, come here, come here." And I really appreciate how a lot of the indigenous community of Australia, especially when they were chilling close by where I was, they were very, very welcoming. Especially they were asking me, "Oh, brother, where are you from?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm from Ghana, Africa." "Oh, Africa, come here, come here." It was this almost level of connection because of maybe of the struggle that both went through due to the craziness of colonization, because also Ghana has been heavily colonized by the British, and they also did a lot of insane, crazy things. Likewise, the genocide and the craziness that took place in Australia is not talked about enough, also because it took place so recently. It was about 100 to 150 years ago. And so it's crazy what's happened there. And most likely I was also speaking to someone that might have seen his grandmother or grandfather getting killed, or who knows what else, by the colonizer, by the British colonizer. And so it's very important also to understand the background from where, once again, as Inisha was saying, the social background is very important to understand. Because also there's a lot of alcohol problems among a lot of indigenous communities around the world. And this alcohol problem actually has been brought by the colonizer themselves. They came with weapons, they came with the cross, and also they came with the alcohol. And the alcohol is what prevents a lot of communities to actually get back to their path, to their roots, and therefore also taking back their land from the interest of Western multinationals and Western also families. But as for these days, these people were beyond clearness, were beyond being sober, and they welcomed me to be with them. And I was asking, what you guys are doing? Oh, we're making fire because our brothers now out there taking fishing for our meal of the day. And I was like, are you guys staying here? It's like, no, we stay in the reservation. So this is also another issue that takes place in many parts of the world all the parts of the world that have been colonized. The indigenous people almost became a rarity that have been placed into almost like a zoo-like environment where they need to be protected. Well, actually, they just need to be given land back so that they can go back into their way of living. But in order for the colonizer to give the land back, meaning that they need to give up to their interest. So that's also where a lot of issues are taking place. But by the way, they were there, and every time they were trying to reconnect to their roots, they were going to this environment where was the place where they were dwelling with their family, fishing, relaxing. So I seen with my own eyes the guy catching a fish with his own spear, and then he raised it up. The spear was literally on the side of the fish, almost like he didn't catch it properly. So it didn't look like the fish was hurt. But the only thing I could see is that he put the fish back in the water. And I was very shocked to see why. And then when he came back, he told me that the fish was too young, and therefore he couldn't be taken. He needed to live its life, and then when it was due time, then eventually they could take it. And they had also a very strong and deep relationship with the natural world. They were the natural world, so this allowed them. It's just common sense. If I'm relying on the environment, I need to respect the environment. I cannot kill it the way the Western world does, where it's just about taking everything out in order to create monocrops and production that kills the environment, and eventually by a few years we have nothing else that the land can give us. This is how the indigenous people were thinking and were acting. That's why also when it comes to diet and food movements, when it comes to be vegetarian, vegan, especially nowadays, it's true that it would help incredibly, because the meat production is the biggest polluter production in the world. In the meantime, the problem is not necessarily the consumption of meat per se, it's the production itself. Likewise, cement is one of the biggest polluter on earth, if not the second or the third. Yet the problem is not cement per se, the problem is the production. The production is problematic when it's associated to also a demand. And the way we eat nowadays is just, it doesn't satisfy our needs anymore. Indigenous people also, they were consuming meat. Most of the indigenous people all around the world as well, meat was something that was happening rarely, not so on the daily. And when this was happening, was a feast. Everybody were in, everything about it was used and also honored. It was a whole different way of feeding ourselves and also feeding the land. And so it's really opened my eyes towards the fact that a lot of the issues of nowadays world, a lot of ethical issues of nowadays world are belonging to the Western way. It's nothing to do with indigenous people of many areas of the world. And so by retracing the way certain people were living, like Aboriginal communities, we can really learn so much and actually see a future for our upcoming life on Earth. So that's, of course, was not all that went through in my mind. This is eventually I elaborate all of this with the years, but on the moment being involved in that explanation and then going back, and they had also other fishes from other catches, and to eat the fish, the best fish I ever had in my life, and everything was just so welcoming and so beautifully. And then I thought it was just a bush, and whatever was for me a bush was actually a pharmacy. One of the elders of the group told me, yeah, you see this plant, you eat it when you get cough, you see this one, you use it in order to clean your hands, to disinfect this and that. It was just a next level knowledge that really opened my eyes towards the fact, hey, this 21st century, this life is really possible. And that was just the trampoline that eventually sent me even further. So from there, I'm not going to make it too long, but after that, I went actually in the States to also stay in the mountains. I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, while also training mixed martial art. I was passionate about martial art. Then after that, I went to India. That was the first time I came to India. It was 10 years ago. It was around Rishikesh, was around this area. And this was the place where I actually had been introduced to natural building for the very first time. I remember ended up in this ashram, and one of the yogis were actually taking care of their kitchen, and they were plastering with cow dung, and it was such a new thing to me. I was like, wow, look at how wealthy nature can be. And of course I was like, how come are these not going to attract more flies? He was explaining to me, no, actually it's the opposite. It's going to keep everything more clean. It's going to keep everything more like insulate, and also all the benefit that he explained at the time was for me so mind-blowing to hear something like that. And so after that, I went to Thailand and I trained Muay Thai for a little bit. And then I went to Aotearoa, nowadays known as New Zealand. I spent some days there. This is actually a crazy story, but I landed there with $50. So I finished most of my money that I saved from Australia while I was in India and Thailand. And then while I was there, I literally landed with $50. So having this $50 in my pocket, I had a friend I landed in Auckland, and there was a city called Wellington. It was 900 kilometers away. So I was like, okay, let me see how I can reach this city. And there was a bus going the day after for like $80 to Wellington. And there was a bus for the same day for $50. I was like, okay, perfect. But I was like, well, I want to find my way to this place. I don't want to just go from point A to point B. I want to live my way. I want to learn my way. So then I decided to walk. So for 900 kilometers, I made an estimation. I should spend a month and a half. I have $50, a loaf of bread every day, water, I find it everywhere. So $1 a day, and we go. So I started to walk. One day of walking, then I slept. I found a forest. I fell asleep there. It was very cold, actually. It was winterish. So then again, in the morning, kept on walking. I freshened up in a stream, and then I kept on going. And then I realized that the part of Aotearoa was not necessarily so wide. Were mainly a lot of farms with a lot of fences and a lot of like highways. It was not how I expected it to be. And then I was like, maybe I should hitchhike. I swear, as soon as I thought about it, somebody just pulled over. I was like, no, this cannot be. So I just kept on walking, and the guy's like pulled down the window and goes like, hey, where are you going? Like, I'm going to Pukekohe. This was the place where I was going like next. It's like, oh, I'm going towards the same direction. Come. Okay. So we started to talk, explain, where I'm from, where he's from, nice vibe, and then he goes like, well, if you're looking for a job, we have a kiwi farm and we need people that prunes. It's pruning season and we need just people in general. If you want to come, you're more than welcome. So I said, I never worked in a farm, such a extended farm. Let me go. So I accepted it, and it was such a cute family, actually. They were very extremely cute. They were from New Zealand, but originally from Portugal. So they were European settlers. Yet they were very, very welcoming. And they gave me a room for myself, close to their homes. There were a bunch of people working there. Mainly the people actually were from the management to the farmers. Everybody were Punjabi, and the owners were. Yeah. So it was also a re-immersion into an Indian way, a Punjabi way. So I found myself quite home also to be around everybody. Once again, not only the farmers, but everybody, like from the management to the farmers, and the owners were settlers from Portugal. And but they once again they treat everybody very respectfully and beautifully, and I spent a lot of time with them. And so basically, I stayed there for a couple of months. I made enough money to also, while I was there, I met people from Samoa. And then I heard that these islands are something special. So then after a couple of months, I was like, I even forgot about Wellington. And I was like, okay, I'm going to Samoa. So I took a flight to Samoa. So basically, I landed in the airport. And once I landed in an airport, once again, it's a type of city. I go outside, I see KFC and shopping malls. I'm like, I didn't think that this was what I was expecting to get into. But then from the distance, I could see some mountains with something that was kind of remind me of a hut type of roof, like a thatch roof. So I was like, I think I need to go there. So I started to walk. I didn't mind how long it would take. In the end, it took me maybe 3 to 5 hours. And once I arrived there, I started to enter into a whole different dimension where there was all these nice, cozy homes in sides of the street, of the road. Some were a bit cement with a iron sheet. Not mainly were all natural building, but with iron sheet. And few were also with a thatch roof. And already been introduced to this type of architecture, especially the walls being like made out of wood and so on, was so attractive. And the people were so chilling outside of their homes, drinking the coco samoa, which is a cacao drink. They were like, hey, where you from? What you doing? Oh, that's very chilling. They offered me the tea, sitting a little bit with them, and then keep on walking. And then keep on doing this. Every 100, 200 meters, somebody was stopping me and asking me to drink something with them, like a tea with them. And then I kept on going. And then at some point, this woman looked at me and she was like, I was just looking around because the sun was about to set. And I was like, okay, I need to pitch the tent somewhere. And I was up to pitch it up on the hills, on the mountain. And then she goes like, where are you from? What are you doing here? I said, oh, I came to visit in this and that. Where are you going to sleep? I said, I have a tent. I'm going to pitch it somewhere up there. And she goes like, she goes like, come with me. I just followed. So I followed her. And then she brought me literally to her house. She introduced me to her parents. They were like, this lady was about 50, 60 years old. Her parents might have been 80 plus. Introduced me to her parents. And the parents just look at me and smile. That's it. And then she said, oh, from now on, this is your room. So that's it. I just put my bag there. There was not even choice. It was like, that's my room. Okay, fair enough. So I stayed there for a couple of weeks. And via this lady, I met another lady that she was from another island. And basically, I got connected to this lady because she knew that I was looking for something very natural from where I could learn from people relying on natural resources. And she said, well, if you need something like that, you need to come to where I'm from, which is Manonotai, is the name of this other island. I'm going to go there next week. Come with me. So I accepted the invitation. I went there, and then her brother was basically living in this island. And so was basically a family of 10 to 11 people that was making a small community. And I'm telling you, Raghav, this family really taught me about self-sufficiency. Like, for real, for the first time in my life, I really seen it, like with Aboriginal people in India, in Australia. I've been introduced to it for like some little like frames of it. But this time I met a family that was relying on it. Literally 90% of whatever they had was coming from the land. I even seen one of the elders of the ladies literally putting together clothing from leaves and natural barks. And it was like so beyond imagination, the knowledge that they had, the wisdom that they had, and the wealthiness that they had around themselves, and the healthiness also that they had around themselves. And to see like they were going spear fishing, so a lot of fish, but also breadfruit, jackfruit, cacao, taro. They were having so much, and their knowledge in connection to the land was so mind blowing. And also the way of building, they call it fale, which simply means house or home. And they build it like it's an open house with made with coconut trunks, thatched roof also with coconut. And then they made these kind of mattresses made with pineapple leaves that they boil, they treat like naturally. I was literally shocked to be also privileged to have lived something like that in this century, like for real. And I could feel that I was living it. Maybe I was living the last bit of this type of life that this family was living, because I could notice, electricity arrived, cell phones arrived, shops with bread from abroad started to arrive. So there were things that were coming from outside, clothing also arrived. And so I could feel there was the last breath of this type of life that this very family also was living, because also the island was starting to change. But this family in particular was still rooted to the type of lifestyle. And so I spent about 2 months with this family, and these 2 months were so intense, so beautiful. I owe so much to them, because literally they welcomed me as one of them as well. And after this month, I felt to go back to Aotearoa and went to the South Island. I hopped on a bicycle for like a couple of months, on a bicycle for hundreds, thousands of kilometers, actually, 1,000 and something, all around the island. It was very beautiful. And then I felt like it was almost time to go back to Europe to share with many friends and family about what I went through, because I was in touch with some of them every now and then. Some people were like, hey, I would love to do what you're doing. I would love to live this wild life, natural life, whatever. And so I went to, first, before going to Europe, I went to Japan. And then from there, I took a bicycle, still the same one. And I went from Laos to Thailand with a bicycle. I wanted to cross border also. Basically, I walk, I push the bicycle. And then eventually, after that, South Africa, Ethiopia, and then also a bit of India. And then I went back to Europe. And then after that, I was looking for a piece of land. And we are getting to Ghana. So I was looking for a piece of land. I was refusing the concept of buying land. So I was looking into national parks, where I was literally willing to go into the wild.
I'd like to interrupt you there a bit. Like, when did you decide that you really needed land to work on? Because
yes,
once you're traveling so much, and then you're into that phase of just traveling, and maybe you want more.
Yeah,
so when do you know in your journey, because you had so many cathartic experiences, it was almost like a metamorphosis, like caterpillar becoming like butterfly, being trained to fly.
Yes.
So after coming to Europe, like, when do you realize that okay, it is time to settle down? Because once you're living a life of a backpack, a tent where you're constantly on the move, but like to buy a land and settling down, it requires so much work. It is a life of attachment, if I could say.
Yeah.
So how was that period for you, and what brought clarity in your mind that you have to now do this?
Yeah. Awesome question, because basically after Samoa, I realized that it is possible to live it, and I felt also I gained also enough knowledge to do it. So first of all, they actually asked me if I wanted to stay there. I mean, bureaucratically speaking, I needed to find my way around it, but I was thinking about it. And but then I felt like, no, I want to go back to Europe to share first. So while I went back there, I realized that I shared as much as possible, and many people also. I realized that also, a lot of the people, they were like, oh, I love what you're doing, would love to. They were, mainly talking about it. They had their own life. They would never be willing to go into the wild or live this type of life. And while I was also there, I was actually in London, and then I also had the chance to go back to Italy to visit. I already knew it, but while being there, I really realized that there's no way I can live a life in this country. There's no way. There's not like I'm mentally refusing it. I just can't. Like, it's not for humans to live this life, like that simple. Like, and after all that I went through, would have been almost like an insult to the whole experience to not go towards whatever has been taken. Also, once again, one very important point here is that I never travel for the sake of traveling. Always this travel, this journey, I would call it, was actually based on finding this knowledge, finding this community, finding that experience that it is possible to live this type of life. Me living in Italy was actually, I was looking to live in a natural environment. It's just that it took a long while to get to that knowledge, a lot of little bit of experience that eventually allowed me to face it. So the aim of living a life in nature was always there. It's always there to settle somewhere. It's always been there. Even in my mind when I did MMA, I was like, okay, I might make my name in like a UFC or this type of reality, and then I will, after a few years, I will retire in nature. That was in mind, you know. But then, yes, once I went back to Europe, I was like, yeah, for sure, I need to find a place where to do so right now, because I felt my initiation maybe was completed. So I felt like, okay, now it's time to do so. So once again, traveling for me was just a tool. I never traveled for the sake of traveling. It was not a gap year or sabbatical. It was just, I knew what I was looking for. It was just a journey that, as a river, it flowed me, if I can say that way, in different places where eventually I felt ready enough. And so once back in Europe, I shared this, and people were like, yeah, of course, everybody living their own life. So what I did, I wrote a book first with all not this story per se, but all the things that I learned on the way. And then I printed it and I gave it to friends and family. Then, by the way, I want to relook at the book. I want to make it a little bit nicer and eventually publish it, but it's another story. And after the book was done, so I spent like about a year in London writing this book. Then in the meantime, I was doing a lot of research on maps. And then I was like, okay, I guess the best place where I can go for is going to be back to Aotearoa. When I was back in Aotearoa in the South Island with a bicycle, there was one place in particular that when I went through, by the way, there were not many people on the island. And there was a lot of nature, especially considering the size of the island, a lot of untouched nature. And by the way, I didn't mention the Maori people. They're crucial when we talk about Aotearoa. We cannot not mention the Maori people that were the caretaker of those islands, the caretaker of the land. And they shape the land in a way, you know. They literally are many indigenous community. They shape rivers, they shape the environment, you know. So it was really a unification of being. Once again, often we think about nature as an external thing, but in reality, we are this, and these communities can really show us this factor. So while I was there, I see one place that I was like, I would love one day to just get myself to rest here and to live my simple yet wealthy life here. So then after I finished the book, I was like, I'm going to go back there. So I did my visa. I had enough money to prove that I would stay there. I had my flight out to Fiji. I did all that I needed to have in order to show the people I was going there for traveling. And then, which was true, but ideally I wanted to stay there, but not in their world, in their colonized world. I wanted to go in the Aotearoa, the Maori world, the natural world. So once I arrived there, to make the long story short, was an international flight that arrived in this small town called Queenstown. Already the name of the town talks about how much colonized this place has been. So once we arrived there, they gave me the stamp on the passport, and then I was about to get my luggage, and this dude working at the airport, white dude, not native of the land whatsoever, yet given the power to decide who should come in or not, looked at me, actually looked at my passport, seen the color was different, was the Italian one. I was like, oh, where are you from? Oh, Italy. Okay, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm going to travel and going to this place. I told the name of the place where I was going. Okay, nice. Okay, come with me. No, he asked me, did you book anything? I said, no. Okay, come with me. He interrogated me for 8 hours. After 8 hours, he was asking me silly question. After 8 hours, he told me, whatever you said has no credibility. We believe that you want to come here to work again with the family that you worked with a while ago. And I told him, look, I have all intention in the world less than coming into this colonized world. But still, you say we believe that you want to help, therefore we're gonna send you back to where you came from, which was London. The thing was, there was not was not like an international airport. It was an international flight, but the airport was closing at night. So they said, we're gonna close the airport and we cannot keep you here. So by law, we need to send you to jail. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? I was laughing. I was like, what are you talking about? Yeah, you need to sign this paper saying that you're going to jail without having committed any crime, that after 4 days, in case we don't find you the flight, then you have to come back on your own to the airport. I never went to jail. I was like, why not? For the sake of living experiences, let's go. I didn't get sent to a jail. There was mainly a small. It was a small town in the end, so it was almost like a police office with like 10 isolation cells. So literally, they put me into these cells where they were giving me food from the door. Like, guys, what's good? I mean, I didn't know they went to that degree. And once you get sent to the police will treat you as a criminal, even though they know who you are or whatever. So I was sent. Literally, the bed was on a cemented platform next to the toilet. It was like literally a movie. I was like, what's going on? So I was there for a night, and then at some point, like even there was no window, nothing. After about 3 nights, no, 2 nights and 3 days, or 3 nights, I forgot right now. They find me the flight, but they want me to pay for it. I was like, guys, you send me, you want me to go back, you pay for it. So then I just wait a little bit more, knowing that in the end 4 days was the max. But they actually kept me by the evening of the day, the afternoon of the day, they sent me back to London. So once back to London, I was like, okay, where else to go? So then I was scouting different areas. I lost quite a good amount of money too. And it's very important that actually connects us to Ghana, that most of the resources used in order to develop this world, this modern world, this conventional Western materialistic world, are coming from the global South, are coming from all those communities and areas that belong to indigenous people. And so it's very important for us. That's why for me this journey is also important to share, because I'm mixed. In the meantime, I feel, of course, in Europe, I never felt home. And so I resonate a lot with my Africanness, with my Ghanaian side, with my indigenous side of being from Ghana. And it's very important for us to reconnect to our roots, especially people with of color, with indigenous roots, to gain back control over our resources, over our land, and understand that the wealth is belonging to our communities, but not only to that, but also our culture has given so much that it's too crazy for us to forget about it and trying to chase this world of nonsense, literally. So that episode really also switched something within myself and sent me back to London. And after that, I was like, where to go? I did some researches and I did an excursion, like was a whole year. I went to Patagonia. I went to the Rocky Mountains. I went to the Apennines. I went to the Alps. I went also to some area of Spain as well, where it was relatively wild. Yet I couldn't find the place where I could not only survive but also thrive. And I needed the ancestral knowledge that I didn't have, especially in a place like Patagonia. Like the indigenous people of Patagonia, the Mapuche, they were living by, often they were managing to hunt whales and get maybe one whale that was feeding them for ages, but like go and feel like, how can I get the knowledge to make the canoe and go and hunt a whale? So it's a whole knowledge that I didn't have. And I was back in Italy doing some excursion on the Apennines, and then I went to Milan to see my family. I went to my father's house to eat. And while I was eating, I was telling him about this journey that I went through in the last year looking for land. Then very casually he goes like, but do you know that we have pieces of land in Ghana? And I was like, oh, I didn't know. Thank you for telling me. So that was really a switch point. I was like, okay, let me go and check it out. So the pieces of land that he was talking about, also himself, he didn't know where they were anymore. They were lost somehow. We knew where they were because my great-grandfather left exactly very beautiful details of where this land were. And he's the one that left them in heritage. He bought a lot of pieces of land in the early 20th century. And then that he bought, literally crazy enough, like he bought acres of land for £5. It was written, it was like a crazy story. But anyhow, he got these pieces of land and eventually left it in heritage for his upcoming generation. And because of modernization, westernization, all that generation went away. Who went to the city, who went to abroad, like my father and my aunts and so on. In the end, these pieces of land are just there. And so I was like, oh, let me go and check. Let me see if I can do that. So my uncle, the eldest of my family, was very excited about my coming to Ghana because he wanted also to retrace this land, because it was almost like was that disgrace to our great-grandfather and great-grandmother to not even knowing where this land are at. All the work that they did to left it, and now we don't even care. So he was very up to the challenge of going and looking for them. So he was the one who was talking around, also because my Twi, the language spoken in Ghana, was not existent back then. Right now, would be better. But basically, he was the one doing the talks and understanding where the land was approximately, and I was going for the walks and signing exactly the map where is what. And so we went for a big excursion that lasted for about 2 months, looking for, there were 5 pieces of land. We find them all. And in the end, my uncle said, okay, Joshua, our mission came to an end. Now it's up to you to choose where you want to start this project of yours, and all the best with it. So then I choose one piece of land, and I didn't know if I was able to do it there because there was no water coming through the land. And I was like, well, the only way for me to see is by digging and see if I can find water. This is where the Ghanaian journey starts.
And I did not know so many details of it. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
And I'm sorry that you had to go through many of those experiences also, but I'm sure it has shaped your journey and now you see it in a different light.
Definitely.
And yeah, I would love to know more about like the initial days, because I know the romantic side is one until you like get a land and build something, and once you're like there, now what, like you're alone on it, there's no water, as you said.
Yes.
So what were some of those initial challenges, and how were your early days like on that land?
There were many challenges. Ones that you mentioned is the solitude, definitely. I mean, I was excited about the solitude because solitude also allows you to do whatever you want, pretty much. Only if you're capable of being alone, then it becomes exciting. In the meantime, of course, you feel that you are alone. You're alone physically. There's a lot of work. So to make a long story short, I did the most natural way by going back to the land and living a natural life, but I did it in the most unnatural way because naturally speaking, humans did a lot of things in communities, and something like that would not only would have to, but would need to take place within communities. And you realize when you work the land how much you need multiple hands in order to really create wealth, and that's why every indigenous communities of families were embedded within indigenous cultures. They tend to have a lot of children. Back in the days, a lot of children, because you want to have your community. There's nobody you can trust mostly than your own family. And it makes also in Ghana has never been a monotheistic way of can I say monotheistic? Monogamy, sorry. It's never been a monogamy system. It is believed also the woman didn't have a monogamy system. Then when the colonizer arrived, I heard they stopped women from polygamy, and then eventually later on they managed also to stop men from polygamy. But I gained this piece of land because I'm coming from the first wife of my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather had 5 wives, and it is I inherited patriarchally because of my clan. I mean, my ethnic group is called Ikwapem, is part of the Akan, but the Ikwapem are one of the few that are inheriting from the father. The other group, they're actually inheriting from the mother, because also makes sense that you always know who's your mother. So in the end, but as for me, it was one of the particular groups in Ghana, because Ghana is also can be, I mean, nowadays it's quite patriarchal, but if you study very in depth the society of Ghana, there's something called the Queen Mother that actually handles a lot of things within the communities. There's the chief, but also the chief cannot be elected without the permission of the Queen Mother. So it's actually quite of also matriarchal way of seeing it. But I mean, nowadays many things change. But anyhow, I got this piece of land, and the challenge of being alone was definitely very tough. But what to do? I'm here, and I'll do the work that needs to be done. So I started to dig with a shovel. Literally, I had 2 tools: a shovel, not 3, a shovel. The other one is like a shovel, but like a
crowbar.
Yeah, the crowbar, and then I had a machete. So I started to dig, and then I didn't find water. I was like, maybe this much, and then I met the rocks. I keep on digging. After about maybe some days, I went to a point where it was like 2 meters. I couldn't get out on my own anymore. It became too much. So I called somebody from a close by village. By the way, very important details is that there was a close by village. The close by village is 1 kilometer away from the land, and the close by village is about 1 hour and a half driving from the main city. So it's not that far from the city, but you go into a whole different world. And of course, 1 kilometer of walking is a big distance. Like you cannot rely on anybody, and it's a very thick bush. It's farmland, bushland, so you are very much in the middle of the forest, of the tropical forest. So then I called somebody from the village. And by the way, in the village it's been kind of initiated by my great-grandfather and my great-grandmother as well. So I'm having a connection to the village. And somebody came to help to work, and so we dug together, digging, and eventually, again, didn't find anything. Then I remember I got injured on my foot, and then we called somebody else, and they kept on going also to other 2 meters or 3 meters. We went down basically to 7 meters, and water was nowhere to be found. Then somebody with a kind of GPS that could detect the aquifers, where they were, whatever. He came and checked, and he showed it was 180 meters down. I was like, okay, guys, bye bye. I was like, okay, then what to do? So I got to be discouraged, of course. But my uncle, I remember, he said, "Oh, look, Joshua, you started to do all of this. Just at least make a water tank, no? Just take some. I would have taken lime if it was available, but lime was not available around, so I took cement. And also, this one taught me a lot about how sustainability also needs to come with durability, but also with common sense. Like sometimes certain natural resources might not be available in the area, and I might end up polluting much more in order to find those natural resources instead of using something that might be a little more polluting but a little bit more easy access. So this also changed a lot of things in my mind, because initially I wanted to really reject anything that was, let's say, conventionally made. Even at points, even hammers and nails at points. It was like, well, let me try to,
You're too idealistic.
yeah, exactly. So you need to be real also with what you can do, with what is the land is offering. And so, yeah, transforming into a water tank, I made a very little roof in order to collect the water, and it worked out. I made it with bamboo. It was not a big roof. It was actually very small. It was just for me to prove and to show that I could do it. And a little bit of water started to be collected there. But it was still dry season, so I couldn't collect too much. After that, so yeah, there were this also the guys came from the village to help, giving a little bit more solo vibe. But to be honest, there was also a big gap when it came to. I felt more alone when people were around, actually, especially people from the village, because this is a very important topic that it goes much in depth. But I'll try my best to explain it in few words, because really, once again, what colonization did, it really create a propaganda, such a propaganda that really create and like put in the mind of every individual, especially in this context, that the West is the best. So a lot of people really also left behind the ancient practices, because they don't bring anything. They don't bring money. There's no value in them. People will look you down if you have a mud house or a natural roof. And so this really change the shape of the society, to the point that a lot of individuals lost indigenous knowledge. And I noticed this in many parts of the world. A lot of indigenous knowledge is lost, not because people forgot, but because literally it's been such a strong wind from the West pushing people to understand that that's whatever is being done on their side is better. That right now everybody would prefer that. Even if right now we are in this mud house, is way fresher than any concrete house in the world, period. Yet people prefer going for a concrete house and then spending more money on AC or more things in it. It just doesn't make sense. And this shows how important this cultural talks is in order to address many issues that are taking place in nowadays world. And so when people were coming, like the guy from the village, when he came, Abraham, he came over, and it was I couldn't connect, because in the end he was doing it for the money, but nothing else. It was not like to help me necessarily to he could see the vision, or he could see further than what I want to do. He want to be part of it. And Ghana is one of those places that really has been heavily wounded by the atrocity of colonization. So this has been the hardest point, to reconnect with what I was doing to the local community.
I know the whole journey was quite challenging, but if you had to pick some moments that you felt were extremely challenging, or where you felt almost like giving up on your dream, what moments were they?
I'm thinking actually if I ever thought of giving up. Yeah, there were some times, especially, to be honest, when I was dealing with the house, with the building of the house. So before the big house, I built some small homes, I would say, just to also have our hands with the resources, because we can accumulate all the knowledge that we want, but eventually, once we arrive in a land with its own particular circumstances, weather, everything starts to change, and everything needs to go back to, it goes down to how much do we know about that very piece of land in the end? What are the resources that are working? I used to use certain wood that was not necessarily a good wood for building with, and then eventually I found the right one. Also, certain people from the village told me about this type of wood that we call kindra. It's the one that we use for building purposes. And definitely the house has been challenging. I did it in collaboration with another man. His name is an elder. He's an elder Mensa. It was from a village that was not necessarily so close. It was maybe an hour walk. And he used to come. One thing that I appreciate about him is that, I mean, first of all, what I need to say is that Ghana and reliability is equal to zero. So maybe also here you might have some challenges with reliability. In Ghana is literally not even zero is already too much. It's minus 100. This is already like more realistic, and it's very, very challenging. But as for all the Mensa, he came every time, especially initially. At the last period, maybe he gave a little bit up, but he was still coming. And so yeah, with him, he designed the house in a way that I designed the house, but I gave him the responsibility of doing the roof since I didn't have a proper experience on the roof on that large scale. Was arguably quite of a big house in the end, with 2 rooms and one side shower, and the bathroom would have been outside. I did it like outside, and like a compost toilet. And yeah, it was challenging also because at some point he made some mistake on the slope of the roof, and the first rain, I remember everything was just leaking, and the mud, of course, was mud walls as well. So also the water was going on the mud walls. I was like, no, I think I cried. Yeah, I think I cried multiple times during the process. Of course, they were very necessary in order to express all the feelings that we're going through. A lot of time I might even cry out of joy sometimes out of sadness, out of disappointment. And this was definitely one of those, out of disappointment, because I was like, man, after all this work, and I'm telling you, it's been like, it was 2 months. Like, he designed the roof, but basically after that, I mean, you can cut it off, but what I want to say is that after that, the leaking took place. Then he kind of gave up on the roof, and he put me on charge of it. And so I just kept on going on my own to put all the bamboo that we cut together, and also some boys from the village came to help after school sometimes, like in exchange of money. And then we cut all the bamboo, and then it was my job to actually put this puzzle together. In natural building, like, nothing is really straight. Everything you need to work with circumstances. So it was 2 months of working, like the heat on the sun. I remember at the end, it was about 2 months. At the end, when I finished the roof, I remember it was just like a joyful dance. I might even cry on that time, but of joy, and it was so beautiful. And I needed to put a tarp on top because of the issue that took place. But overall, yes, a lot of times like this took place, a lot of them. A lot of challenges came along, and the only way was just to observe for what it was, not trying to interpret it, anything. It was like, okay, that's what's going on. What is the best way to find the solution? And then thinking and speculating about the solution, contemplating and meditating about the solution after maybe some days, coming back with the solution and applying it and see the result of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure like there are so many challenging days, and especially with working in all kinds of season, and what you see on the YouTube videos is just the video. You don't know what the temperature is there.
Correct.
How many mosquitoes are biting you.
Correct. Video. Yes. Actually, to go and steal again from the question of challenges, the main challenge for me personally, hands down, hands on fire, everything, malaria. I had it many times. Like, there's been maybe my biggest companion during this journey. I'm telling you, it's been a ferocious, vicious companion that I started to learn. So, and this knowledge allowed me also to avoid to get hospitalized when I had it. So in the end, after 3 times getting hospitalized, I'm like, okay, I recognize the symptoms. I just take the right herbs at times, but certain malarias are coming in a way that are quite vicious. So sometimes I did take conventional medicine that, to be honest, frankly speaking, they did save my life in certain occasions. So also this to tackle towards the fact that it's not a matter of, to me at least, of rejecting whatever comes from the sadist modernity. It's a matter of understanding what works and in which circumstances they should be taken. Not only medicine, but in anything, vehicles, in transportation, in food, in anything, in farming, because there is a certain level of okay, now it's needed, now it can be helpful, but then there's a point where we just satisfy our laziness, our inability to face with a challenge. That's where that's when the issue starts, when we just use it disregarding the actual circumstances, if it's needed or not. And so yeah, many challenges of that type.
Thought of eco-colonization, like in the name of doing something good for the ecology. There have been cases of like eco-colonizing it. So 2 parts to this question. Like one, what is your thoughts on that? And second is a follow-up. So people with good intentions, but they might not have any ancestral lands like you had, or not, they do not know where they belong or where their roots are, but they still want to do something with nature, and they want to go back to a rural place where they do not belong. So how do they, how should they go about it without, eco-colonizing the place?
Yes.
So two parts to this.
This is a very, very beautiful point, beautiful question as well. Very important, because eco-colonization is something that is taking place on a very fast rate, and also because it stays behind the cover of being like ethical, of being nice, nothing bad about it actually. But in reality, I think the main issue is when people are going to other places where they don't necessarily culturally belong, because we all belong to this earth for sure. Yet once again, every piece of land is also shaped by the culture itself that took place in that land. So in the end, we cannot go in one place without analyzing and understanding the culture that took place. So I think the issue comes when individual, and I've seen this also often, very often, even in Africa as a whole, in Ghana, not necessarily only within the eco aspect, but in any aspect, especially when it comes to NGOs, when people are coming with this aspect of, I'm going to help, like this so-called white saviorism, when it's like, I don't want to deviate too much from your question, but there's also this point of people going to do something, I'm going to do something good for the people, for the environment, while bringing their cultural traumatic luggage and baggage with them that eventually just bring distress to that environment, because the frequency of that very reality is not the same frequency that the person is bringing or is coming from. So even if somebody is not necessarily culturally or even bloodly connected to that land, the main thing that needs to take place is understanding the knowledge from the local culture. The first thing is talk to the people, the local people, trying to understand from them, trying to see what they know about farming, what they know about building, trying to dig as deep as possible within their ancestral knowledge as well, because somehow it is there. Even though in Ghana is a place that a lot of ancestral knowledge is gone, yet there's still a lot that inevitably is embedded within farmers. So trying our best to get that understanding and to collaborate with the local community also. Not to just go out there. For example, there's a lot of this going on in Costa Rica, for example. We're going out there, there's a bunch of white people from the States, from Australia, from different places going out there. And most of these people don't even speak a word of native language, not even a word of Spanish. I'm like, how can this take place? How? There's the need to have an interaction with the local community, especially if individuals are coming from a privilege that also allowed them to make that switch, to make that change. And so it's a bit tricky, but I would say if somebody can do it in their own cultural land, is even better. If they have to do it somewhere else because the place where they're from has been urbanized to a level where they cannot find a spot where they can do this project, then do it elsewhere, but it cannot be done without considering, studying, analyzing, and understanding the local community, and therefore applying whatever you want to do in connection to the community and also to the need of the community. Because this work in the end, even though it is individual, even myself, as alone as I can be, but is influencing my community. Now I'm running retreats, I'm doing workshops, there are people from all over the world that are coming there. I'm influencing big time my community, and I had many meetings with the chief, trying to bring together a type of a team-like effort where other people are coming and sharing their own knowledge. Antiama, for example, she comes and shares about herbal medicine. We have somebody else coming for storytelling about our environment. And it's not just the wealth that is generated should be placed, yes, for whoever is involved in it and divided accordingly, but also for the upgrowing of the village itself, of the community itself, so that also everybody can be involved in it and partake and bring this to the next level. And there's a lot of places in South America, Central America, Asia, where this can be done very beautifully, because the knowledge of the native people is very much strong as well.
Yeah, I agree, to whatever you said. And I also feel like if you're going to a place where you do not belong, once you have to always remember that you're an outsider.
Yeah.
And see how you can bring value to the community, by respecting their ways, by their existing traditions, and not bringing that elitism or the privileges that you're coming from. you have to downplay your privileges a lot also in certain
Yeah, exactly.
aspects.
Or even better, I would say even better. Like for example, me personally speaking, as my own experience, individually is that I when I arrived to Ghana, realistically I didn't have much more than the people there. Monetarily, literally, I went there with very a small amount of money, but I was used to be without money. I had one privilege initially, which was also the Italian passport, but with which I couldn't necessarily share it, as a something. But one thing that I started to grow was my social media page. This became a privilege that also came from my story, because maybe there might be other people from the same I mean, there's nobody in there, but maybe somebody else might have come up with a similar initiative, but maybe didn't attract the same amount of interest because it was not somebody coming from Europe, mixed and so on. So I recognize this privilege that this story attracted, and this platform that we have. And right now it's like, okay, let's use it. In which way we can actually promote our work and share our knowledge with the rest of the world, while also enriching our own packet as community as well. So this has also been part of it, which to be honest has been very challenging within the Ghanaian context that I cannot explain here, and one needs really to live in Ghana to understand the Ghanaian dynamics. But generally, in many places, especially in the global south, these things are very much doable in order to collaborate and to commonly grow.
Now I want to ask you, like, whether you believe in this law of attraction or manifestation, and if you do, how do you go about manifesting things in your life?
So, I mean, maybe my experience, my story, or possibly also could be a statement of this law. In the meantime, my way of seeing it is not, let's say, this more, I would say almost, I steal the word, hippie way of seeing it. It's not like you sit down, you think about it, and then it comes in front of you. If this happens, it's two things: you are lucky or you're privileged. And a lot of time, I believe that this law of manifestation has been especially talked about by many privileged people that have things very easily on their hands. I believe that, especially for people of color, let's be real, nothing will come easy. And there's the need of a lot of work. And manifestation, actually, I made also a reel about it. Manifestation comes from the word manifestum, which is a Latin word that combines two words, mani and festum. Festum is like a feast, mani is like hands. So I like to take the first part, mani, hands. It's like you need to work towards what you want to manifest. You need to put your hands in it. You need to put your mind in it, your body in it, your energy in it, your money in it. If you put all of you in it, for sure it will come. But it's not like, let me think about it, it will come my way. Because that one is not really the way. So I believe in it, and I believe it is only via hard work and discipline and dedication, and make no mistake about it, it will come. It will come, but there's a lot of work.
Yeah, I think you need to have a vision and you need to visualize what you wanted, but then you have to follow it up.
Exactly. So yes, everything starts from our mind. Yeah. Like even the way I design this village, this place, I draw a lot. I even before drawing, I envision a lot, and then I draw it, and then eventually it's applying that into real circumstances, right? So yeah, I believe the law of manifestation is real as long as we see it for what could possibly practically really is, which is work towards it.
Yeah, wonderful. And so many people reach out to us, like when they think of moving to the countryside or living the rural life, but their biggest fear is maybe getting lonely there. And you've been like living alone and doing this, building this eco-village, also traveling, and the Australia story that you mentioned. So there's a very fine line between loneliness and solitude. So how do you perceive both? And like, what are the pros and cons of doing something like this alone versus just being part of an existing eco village or a like-minded community?
What is the difference between these two?
Yeah.
Well, I cannot tell the difference because I never lived necessarily within an extended community. There were people that came through, some for more days, some for longer period of time. But to actually visualize this with somebody else and to implement this within the same level of dedication, love, and passion and discipline, I didn't have the chance to do it. So I cannot compare. But I only know that I could feel that, once again, I'm doing something very natural, but in a very unnatural way. And I can feel also as I'm growing within this environment that I could feel the need of having a community, but I cannot control that. One thing that I learned from my experience, and as for this one, I'm not trying to be exaggerated. I learned that not because of me, we as humans, in this case, I would say I can do everything I put in my mind, like everything. It's not everything can be done, and I'm not even exaggerating with this. It's for real. The only thing I cannot do is one thing, and it's changing people. And so that was something I cannot do.
I totally understand.
So to find the right people or to change, I tried also. Maybe certain people came to the land and with certain mindset and trying to allow the experience to change them. But this place where I'm at, especially, is not so gentle. It's tropical forest. It's like in or out. You want it or not. So only the most high, the higher forces will, if this meant to be something bigger than whatever it is now, they will send the right people along. And so far, it's something I cannot control. I'm only proud of whatever took place. I feel that my job also has been accomplished in a way. And you asked me also something about solitude. And so, yeah, I think there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. To me, being alone is a physical state. Being lonely is a psychological state. And realistically speaking, when you go very much in depth, if I even take myself out of the vision and I just see my life within the natural realm, there's no way on earth, no way on this universe that an individual can be alone or can be lonely. I can be alone, humanly speaking, as a species, but there's no way I can be alone as life. And if I really am about that life, I would inevitably start to see the depth of it. I would inevitably go beyond the shape of things, the shape of a tree, the shape of a bird, the shape of a river, and start to feel inevitably the essence of everything. And this is not something so trippy. I mean, maybe some people might start feeling it via certain herbs or medicinal properties that allow people to have maybe psychedelic trips or whatever. But even here, there's a lot of meditation techniques and so on that you start to tackle within something deeper than flashes. And when you go deeper, just slightly, not even too deep, but slightly deeper, you see that there's no way on this universe that we can be alone. I'm talking about, without even tripping too much, biologically speaking, I am alive because of the oxygen that is released by the trees. They are taking life from the sun, from the water. So it's all one unique thing, one unique dance. And when you are in this environment, like every night, I fall asleep with a concert of life, of cricket, of bats, of trees flowing, of winds, it's a concert that is alive. It's not like I'm not trying to be hippie, but like it's real. Like you feel it and you live with it on the daily basis. You see the stars and the moonlight and how everything affects each other. Is one unique thing. So being lonely, only a distorted mind can think to be lonely in this universe, even in this earth, because there's no way. Unless I'm so superficial, therefore distorted to the point that I can only conceive life within flashes. But when you go beyond, and just if you're aware of your breath, as simple as that, you know that it's beyond flashes. And then by then, you can see this magnitude of life. And this very thing is what really brought me so much joy. And so many times I was just going out, maybe right before going to sleep, or maybe waking up in the middle of the night and going outside, maybe just to pee, maybe just to have a fresh air and to see the sky and to see and to feel that energy. At that night is a whole different level. And I would cry. At times I would cry out of joy, out of completeness that this realization gave me. So that's what I have to say about it. But if I want to keep it more practical, then of course I feel the need of having people around me. That's for sure. So it depends. There's two phases of this question. One is more practical. In that case, I would say yes. One more human. More forget about the vision and what about your life there. As for that one, there's no way I can be lonely.
Yeah, that's a very refreshing take on seeing loneliness, whether you're alone or not. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm sure, man, this must be a crazy journey for you and all the experiences that you would have had. And of course, people can see all the videos and the hard work that you have put into building this eco-village, like from digging that well that you're talking about and building the mud hut that is there, and even the earth bag place. And right, there's an earth bag also.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And So yeah, I mean the incredible hard work and the labor of love that you most of the times put it single-handedly, sometimes with the local community and also volunteers coming in.
Yeah.
It definitely shows, and I'm sure there's so much learning that you might have gained from that experience, and you've shared the same learning with people through your Instagram mainly and other social media channels. And I've been also quite inspired by what all you do, and like it's on multiple facets, not only natural building but food fermentation and like how you make your own chocolate, like crazy things with your beautiful smile, of course. But before we end this podcast, I would like you to share some advice or like your 2 cents on, like there's so many people who are currently seeking this kind of lifestyle, and they're maybe traveling to different places, they're volunteering there, but like to build something like what you did in your own indigenous place and indigenous ways. What advice would you give them, like who are maybe on the shore, like waiting to sail?
Yeah, it's nice to talk about waiting to sail, because I think one of the things that keeps people stopped is the fear of going out in the ocean. But guess what? No boat has been built to stay in the harbor. So what we fear, once again, is the unknown. And I think a lot of people, they dream about it, but then when it's time to do it, there's a lot of questions. A lot of questions is like, oh, can I make it? Is it going to work? Is enough money? Is enough time? Is enough this? And one thing that I can tell you, like 1,000%, there's never going to be the right time, never going to be the right amount of money, never going to be the right amount of people around you. So at some point, it's just a matter of doing the first step. And that first step eventually will lead to next steps and the next steps. But every step has to have, is the most important thing, it has to have an insane, obsessive amount of discipline. Without discipline, it cannot take place. And it's really something that I noticed also when people came to the land, maybe doing retreats or maybe doing certain program, is that really people got really disconnected from hard work. And there's no way we can live a natural life without working hard. And the working hard is not like, because a lot of time people be like, yeah, we developing towards a technology that allowed us to work less. That's what we should do. But also the very nature of our being and the very health of our being is based on movement, is based on work. And and here I'm not talking about hard work, like the toxic type of work, like people getting burned out and all that, because nature would never make us work more than what is needed. That's the point. There's time to rest. Like nature shows us, there's night and day. There's time to rest and time to work. And if we follow that way, if we work for nature, inevitably we will also have time to rest. Inevitably, we will. There's time where you need to seed a lot, and time where you can just seed, let the rain do the rest, and time where you just harvest. So don't be afraid to face the unknown, or no, be afraid to face the unknown, but don't be stopped from the fear. Face your fear, number one. And number two, don't wait for everything to be perfect, because it will never be. I made also a video about it where I'm sharing that there's never going to be the perfect moment, the perfect time, the perfect circumstances, because this path, especially this path of natural ways, since there's nowhere else where we can take example from except for our ancestors. So we need to look at our ancestors, but then when it's time to do it, we need to do it on our own. So it's a path that needs to be paved by our own self, day after day, breath after breath, literally, like day after day, breath after breath. When I arrived to the land, I was not like, I had a vision, but I was not like, oh, tomorrow I'm gonna do this. Like, Rome has not been built in one day kind of thing. Yeah. So it's like you just take it step by step. And once again, maybe the most important thing, being able to relish the journey, because the journey is way bigger than the result itself, like way bigger. That's why we're also the detachment that you were talking about. Like it's true, it's going to be an investment. There's going to be a monetary investment, but even beyond, an energetical investment, a mental investment. And this very investment is what really allows an individual to grow to the point that goes even beyond the home itself, goes even beyond the natural living itself, is deeply spiritual in the end. So don't be afraid, face your fear, be disciplined, and take it day by day.
Yeah, thank you. That was quite enlightening, and I could feel every word that you said, because some of it I've lived through my journey as well, and I resonate with that message a lot. And before we end, I know most people already know you on your like social media channels, but if someone who's new and watching this and they want to like know more about your journey, like where can they connect with you or like follow you?
Yeah, so mainly would be Instagram is one of the main one, YouTube as well, TikTok as well. It all goes by Live to Learn, Learn to Live, or Joshua Kwaku Aseidu, and that's where they can follow the journey and all the rest.
It's been an absolute honor to know you in person, Joshua, and also share this space. And I'm sure like this friendship will maybe a lifelong friendship that we have. And there's so much to learn from you, and there's so many topics that I still want to talk about. Maybe we'll have to do another podcast.
Part two. Yeah, definitely.
So thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you for having
It's really heartwarming. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that was really Thank you so much.
Awesome.